Okay, so now the dust has probably settled a little bit more on the Lionesses' 1-0 defeat to Spain in the World Cup final, which obviously was tremendously crushing and disappointing. I think it's worth just recollecting about how much of a result this represents for English football and the women's game especially. No women's team had ever reached a World Cup final, so instantly history has been made. I think at this moment in time it probably feels quite patronising to kind of say that, purely because the team were good enough to win the competition. And that's kind of the most gutting, but also the most encouraging thing to take from this defeat to Spain, is that England were good enough to win the Women's World Cup. They had plenty of chances to make this game go in a different direction, and they were just unfortunate that they didn't take theirs, and Spain did. And they took their chance brilliantly as well. The goal was fantastic. It will feel gutting at the moment to have got so close to lifting that trophy, the biggest trophy in the game, just falling short. And I know a few players will look at that and think, it's 4 more years till the next World Cup, and that's the ugly side of losing a World Cup final. 4 years of thinking what might have been, and that will be exactly how they're feeling right now. This team is young enough to kind of bounce straight back, and they must be looking at the next Euros and retaining that European title and thinking they've got a great chance. So many players have still got so much to prove, so much time to still play and play at this highest level. Of course, there'll be a few players that we won't see probably at the next World Cup. I think Lucy Bronze will probably be one of those. She had a disappointing finish to this tournament, didn't she? And I think she's been an absolute legend of the English game and will continue to be. She will know when the time's right to step down from England duty, but that time's not yet. But so much to look forward to for the Lionesses. And I think what I don't want to see is this talk of legacy from this result in the World Cup and how deep they've gone in the tournament, because I feel like the legacy was already cemented last year at the Euros. So I feel like that hard work has already been done. Now we're in the stage where we're looking for some kind of parity with the men's game. And I honestly believe the very elite level of the women's game is certainly on a par with the international game for the men as well. I feel like the best of the women's teams would give a real run for their money with the best of the men's teams. The quality's improved that much. Spain are in that bracket too, obviously. Sweden, United States, I still think are a very good team. But England are definitely a bit of bias here, I think. The best team in women's football, and obviously Spain will have a lot to say about that right now, but there's not much between them. If anything, they're on a par with one another. So heads held high for the Lionesses. All this talk of legacy I think is patronising at the moment, because they've already cemented that in my eyes. Lifting that European trophy did that for them. I think what we have learned is that the women's game has grown so much globally now that the viewing figures that we saw, the attendances we saw in Australia and New Zealand, are proof that there is a demand for it. And I really do hope that FIFA acknowledge this and all of the national federations give every female player what they deserve. But I mean, look at the performances, first of all, of these women's teams, and then look at the interest in the tournament. How can you not say that international women's football is not generating revenue? And I think that's the same with the Champions League. The Women's Champions League this last season was superb. And the very, very top of the WSL was incredibly competitive. There is some parity there with the men's game now. And although that hasn't trickled down further down the chain to smaller nations at international level, or even to the bottom half of WSL in England, I think it's a matter of time now. The best of the women's game is getting so much better. And I think this World Cup will be acknowledgement of that when we look back at it in a few weeks' time. Compared to what I remember seeing in 2019, I think the quality of women's football has grown so much in 4 years. And you can see the USA were by far the best team 4 years ago. Now there's probably 5 or 6 women's teams that could easily have kicked on and had a better tournament than they did. And that's really encouraging for the women's game. But for the Lionesses, this has to be something that they use as motivation to kind of cross that final hurdle next time they get in this position, because I do believe they will get in this position again, because they've got such a good set of young players coming through. Well played, Lionesses. We're all proud of you. Gutted, as you probably are, but I think reason to be optimistic going forward.